What involves in this section? As you know, you're already taking up the substructure, groundwork and foundation. Now you're going to measure this superstructure, but which we will be focused on more on walls, and will be covered in part 3 and some of the finishes, except for services and external work. We only cover 1 to 3. So what is masonry? If you check your SMM7, you will find that it falls under category F. It can be F10, F11. So if F10, it should be under brick or block walling. If you have a glass block walling, you go for F11, or you have another different type of wall, you use F20 and so on. And you should know by now what is the unit of measurement for wall. And used for measuring most of the masonry work is actually meter square. Before that, we need to understand what is the standard size for brick. So normally, accepted size of brick is 215 by 102.5 times 65 mm with a 10 mm mortar joint. Mortar is the plastering, so normally it's 10 mm. Previously, you see in the tutorial 3 under foundation, I use this term for the brick. I call it half brick without giving you the dimension. So actually, it has a standard size for each of these names. So when I said half brick, the thickness should be 1 or 2.5. If I said 1 brick, it will be 215 mm because it is the way how you arrange the brick. So the 215, if you arrange the brick like this is the stretcher face and this is the header face. Or 1.5 brick, so 1 or 2 plus 215. Or you can use 2 brick, 215 plus 215 become 440. This is the types of brickwork arrangement. So if you see here, you can see this is just a single brick, the way you arrange it. So we call it half brick wall. On the other side is 1 brick thick wall because the way you arrange it, the header face is towards here and the stretcher face is facing here. So it's actually in accordance to the way you arrange your brickwork. That's why you call this side is half brick, and or you can arrange it as 1.5 brick wall. So it depends how your architect or engineer specify the construction of the brick, and the contractor will follow, and they will have a different pricing for the way the brick is arranged and the number of material being used. So if you know it is 1.5 brick wall, of course you will use more brick so that the thickness will be increased. So normally this is suitable probably for a gate, for a type of wall that require more soundproof or a better thermal insulation. So brickwork, terms commonly used for brick wall in construction industry. So you can see before I have mentioned about common brickwork and also facework. It's actually two types of different brick. So it's very important to specify which type of brick in your description because they will have a different price. So what is common brick? It is wall in ordinary bricks without any special finish. So normally it is hidden from view, meaning that normally used in the substructure below ground level. So where it can be used at superstructure as well, but it will require plastering because of the appearance is not really aesthetically pleasing. So it has more pores, so you have to do mortar plastering, and it's much cheaper than facing brick. Meanwhile, for facing brick, it is purposely to be exposed for a view because of its smooth finish. Okay? So it is left with a pleasing finish. So even if you did not plaster it, it is also fine because it has a better aesthetic and it also saves time. and it's only require a mortar joint to arrange the construction of this brick. Other than that two types of brick, we also have engineering brick, where these bricks have low water absorption and it has a high compressive strength. So you can use this in retaining walls, bridges, or manholes. So it still depends on the purpose of its construction, but it's important to specify in the description, especially in a bill of quantities. For the mortar joints, it also has a different type of mortar joints that you can choose, and also it's important to specify types of mortar joints. If you notice in the SMM7, they will ask about what joint of the brick. One is concave, it can be V-shaped, grapevine, beaded, weathered, so many kind of mortar joint, and it has a different purpose, but normally is to avoid any water retaining on the joints. Another thing important is what types of bond arrangement. Is it stretcher bond, English bond? If you notice the stretcher face with the header after that, and then stretcher face again, then header face. Or Flemish bond, where you blend with both stretcher face with the header, stretcher, and header again. So we need to specify so contractor know which prices fit the types of arrangement. Other than brick, we also learned that we measure block before. So block normally gray in color, and the size is a bit different from the brick. So before in foundation, we measure the thickness of block, which is 100, but it actually have a different thickness. It can be up to 150 thickness of the block, or maybe 200, and it has a different grade as well. So normally it is used for the internal wall. If it has a double wall, you can put block first as your internal, and your outside will be covered by a brick. Measurement of brickwork. So you know that brickwork is generally measured by taking the mean girth. So you're using the center line of the brick, then you times with the height. What does it give you? The area of the wall, meter square. So in this case, they describe first, let's say edge down Mayfield multicolored stock brick, giving you the size there, and the center length is 29.71 meter times the height 0.53, then it's just one side vertical. So you get the area of the brick. There's another rules, no deduction are made for voids within the area of brickwork not exceeding 0.10 meter square. Meaning if you have a wall, you have an opening, but the opening is less than 0.10, then you don't have to do some deduction. You will only deduct if it is more than 0.10. Maybe our window is quite bigger than this size, so we need to do some deduction on window and door and other necessary opening. So going further, the measurement of walls can be conveniently divided into the following subdivision: external wall, internal wall, partition, projection or piers, chimney stacks. So I will show you what is meant by projection of piers. Some of the wall it has either projected out, we can call it either piers, or will it be considered just a projection. Okay. So the SMM require for us to describe of its classification, whether it is a walls, or either it is isolated piers, or either it is isolated casing, chimney. So in each of this classification, brickwork is described as vertical, or whether it's battering, tapering, meaning battered one side, or tapering, Okay, so brick or block walling description is actually required for you to describe what is the kind. Okay, so meaning you need to state, is it a block, is it a glass wall, is it a stone wall, and what is the quality and the size of the bricks. So you should know what is the size of the brick from your uh, drawing or specification, and what grade it is, whether it's spacing or and so on, and the bond, is it mortar joint, and so on, what is the arrangement that I had tell you previously, and the type of pointing. So all of this is required for you to describe, so that contractor know what they going to construct and what type of pricing usually fits for that type of work. So rather than you describe each types of wall that have a different thickness, you can make it as a preamble or heading. If it's a common lightweight concrete insulation block, but it has a different wall thickness, but it has a similar size, you can just state the first thickness of the wall is 135. Maybe the similar block at the bottom will have 100 wall thick, so you can just collect it under one heading if it share the common stretcher bond, same mortar, same types of wall. So that should be fine to include in the same preambles or heading. Okay, or you can just straight away describe like this, and when you quantify again at the bottom part, if you want to rewrite it again, it is fine, but it will be too much description. If it's just same, why don't you just make a heading, and maybe the only difference would be the thickness of the wall. Okay, so wall need to be described specifically in accordance to each of the measured item, and to state whether it's a brick or block, and whether it is not common to all work, or is it a facing brick, and so on. Because the cost of facing brick is actually more expensive than the common brick. Okay, how much is the price of the brick currently? You guys might want to check that in hardware. Okay, so it is necessary to show in the descriptive part of the measurement to distinguish between these two types of walling. Because in your SMM7 they will provide alternative description, so you should understand that some face work is one side, some can be both side if it's double wall. So the rules for measuring block work is also follow closely as how you measure your brickwork, because they are similar, under similar category. It is under F category. Okay, now let's go to projection. Okay, projection is the type of wall which actually protrude a bit from your original wall there. So if you see here, there's a 440 mm projected from the 4500 mm wall. Okay, and the height is 2850, and the thickness for each of these is 215. Okay, so there's a rules to consider whether the projection will be measured as a wall, which is it will be in meter square, or you will just measure this in linear because you don't consider it as a wall. Okay, so projection are defined as attached or isolated pier if their length on the plan, okay, so the length on the plan here is 440, is less than 4 multiplied with the thickness. Okay, so you try to multiply the thickness with 4, so it's the rules there. And how much did you get? I have 860 mm there. So if you see that 440 is less than 860, you will not consider this as a wall. Okay, so this projection is not considered a wall. So how do you measure it? So projection of attached or isolated piers are measured as linear meter. All you need to do is to state the width. 440 mm is the length from the top view, the plan, and how much is the thickness of this, and you just state the height of that particular wall. So it's no longer in meter square. However, where the length of a projection exceeds the 4 times its thickness, just now it has a 215 times 4 equal 860. So as you see, the length there is 1.113. Okay, so sorry, 1.115. Okay, so it's actually exceed the 860. So all of this length included the thickness from the original wall will consider as it is. Okay, the wall will be here in meter square, and also for both sides of this. So meaning the wall in the middle will have a thickness of double. Okay, the wall will be 215 plus 215, meaning the wall thickness will be 440. So you only take the 1.12, which is the 1.115. Okay, so you make 2 decimal places and you time with the height, and the remaining, okay, this side and this side, so you do some calculation there. 4500, the whole length, minus with the middle 1.15, the remaining is 3485. So you just state the wall thickness as 215. So both remaining here is the thickness of 215 and the middle is the 440. So you see the difference between the projection as a linear meter and a projection that will be considered as a wall. Okay, so if you stumble upon the types of wall like this, you need to be very careful when you're measuring whether to measure it as a linear meter, you state the height only, or you consider both as a wall but of different thickness. Okay, so other than a projection, there's also other types of protrude wall. We call it overselling, plane. Okay, so you have to check your SM7 what type of unit to measure if it's a plane, or for description whether the wall is battering, so it's inclined a bit. So now you're going to do your tutorial 3, which is under masonry. Okay, superstructure. So you will measure this type of building. We call it a gable wall building. Gable wall means the roof will have wall extended on the side of each roof there.